we can best support our brothers. So really glad you're here today. Hopefully we can all learn together. I really am informal with presentations, so feel free to send questions in the chat. I can kind of eyeball that while I'm going through the slides. Feel free to jump out and share. Maybe you have an additional point you'd like to share with the group. If you have a question, anything like that, feel free to jump in at any time. I really want to make sure you're getting a lot of tangible things out of this that you'll be able to take back to your chapters and in all that you do. So I noticed with this new feature that I can be on the screen, it did take away my transition abilities on the slide. So we'll kind of bear with me on that. But again, super excited. I hope you're engaged and ready to learn and hopefully participate as well. So really quick, I just want to introduce myself. Now I can move myself around on the slides. This is a super cool thing. The first question I've been getting is, how do we do this with the slide? How do you get on it? It's the new update with Zoom. If you go on to share screen settings in the advanced section, and it's a beta version. You can actually put yourself in the slides and make the slides your background, which is super awesome. So who am I and why am I here talking to you all today? My name is Brennan. I am the past president of the Gamma Psi chapter at the University of Arizona. I've had the absolute privilege and pleasure of serving in a variety of roles within the organization over the past 4 years. I was initiated in the fall of 2017. So 8 semesters ago, it's absolutely flown by, but a lot of fun. I go to the University of Arizona, which is in Tucson, so just north of the Mexican border. And I have also had the opportunity to serve in a variety of different task forces, most recently the COVID-19 regional task force, as well as the national task force. And then I just found out I had to add this bullet to the slide, which is this, I'm still in absolute shock about, but I'm very lucky to represent all of my collegiate brothers on the line as the 2021 COI. So I hope we can definitely talk about that a little bit at the end and how I can best help support you on an individual level and how I can best support your chapters moving forward. But I'm super excited. And it was also a big week just in news-wise, because I also just found out yesterday that I'll be moving to Seattle after graduation. So if anyone is going to Seattle, to Seattle, from Seattle, has visited there once, that'll be more than me. So please, any tips, tricks about Seattle, would love to hear it. I'll be working for Procter & Gamble, but on the Amazon account team. So super excited about that. And my goal for all of you is just to really re-energize your chapter, re-engage, get everyone involved, get them excited about being in chapter, because if they're not, then why are we doing this in the first place, right? And then I always like to share a fun fact. And my fun fact is that I raise tortoises. I love animals. I've raised almost any animal you could possibly imagine. But most recently, 500 tortoises this past year. So if you're bored, check us out on Instagram, Tucson Tortoises. It's super fun. All right. Now I want to see who all of you are. And we have a pretty intimate group, which is absolutely awesome. So I am going to stop sharing my screen so I can see all of you, which is the highlight of my night. And I'm just going to ask a couple questions. I won't make everyone turn their cameras on because I don't want to put that pressure. But if you could just use the little reaction tool, that would be super exciting, just to let me know who's in the room. So first, if you're from the Western province, if you could give me a thumbs up Western. All right, a lot of people from the Western province. Thanks for joining us. I feel like it's mostly within our time constrictions. This is a late presentation, so appreciate you being on. How about our North Central province? Any North Central? Woohoo! Represent. Thanks for being on. Any people from the Southern province? All right, I know who to go after now. You know, I gotta better recruit them for the next one. How about the Northeastern province? Woohoo! Awesome! Thanks for coming on. It's late for you, so I appreciate you making the time. And the South Central? Yay! Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for being on. Super excited to have you with me. I wanted to just get a feel as well. Do we have any first year students on the call? Any first year? You can go with any reaction. Second year students? Woohoo! A couple, fantastic. Any third years? No third years? Maybe one. How about fourth years? If you're about to be leaving the college experience, fantastic. I love that you're here making an impact before you go off into the big world. Exciting. And then volunteer leaders. Woo, we got a few of you on the line as well. And then any just general alumni here just for fun? Sweet. Super glad you're here. Thank you for humoring me. And I have to ask this last one. Coke or Pepsi? Give me a thumbs up for Coke, thumbs down for Pepsi. Okay, I'm loving the thumbs up. I'm a little biased because I've worked for Coke for the past several years. So there was only one right answer and I think you all passed. So thank you for humoring me with that. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. It's great to know who we have in the room, and I'll try to tailor it a little bit more to meet our needs, but super, super excited about that. All right, let's see if we can get back up. Uh-oh, you want to start all over again? You having that much fun? All right, we'll skip ahead. Beautiful. So the reason that I really started this thought about why I wanted to present on this topic so bad was because I've really, really, really thought hard about the DSP life cycle, right? And I think that the most important thing in our culture is what I just like to refer to as making our culture circular. And I've had the opportunity to speak a lot at all of our recruitment events. And this is always what I try to hammer in with the people who are going through our recruitment process, is that it's really important that you go through this life cycle with the fraternity, because it's a very, very special place to be. So at the very top, you're entering the fraternity, right? Your pledge semester, if you can think back to that time, it's kind of crazy. You're probably coming in looking to develop friendships, you're looking to grow professionally, looking to gain skills that will help you take yourself to the level that you want to be at. And that's a really exciting time. So you get a bid, you're going through the pledge process. This is the part where you're learning, you're engaging, you're participating. You go through initiation, you're an active brother. It's awesome. You're being able to gain leadership roles, and you're really being, at the core of what I love to see in involved brothers. And then you reach this really pivotal moment, which I think is, in my opinion, one of the biggest turning points within a DSP career, is you reach the professional milestone that maybe you had set out for yourself. You reach that goal of getting the internship you want, the job you want. Maybe you get into a grad school. Whatever the case is, what you've been working towards, you get that at some point. Sometimes in some people's DSP journey, that might come really early. In others, it may come at the very end. But this is the point where we tend to see a lot of brother drop off. And I know that problem isn't unique from talking to my other peers. And that's a really big issue, because then you miss the last step of paying it forward, which in my opinion is by far the most important, not only for the continued health of the chapter, but I actually have personally gained far more in being in roles where I'm able to give back than when I was going through the roles of gaining information. A lot of people don't realize how much you can get out of that side of it. And so when people ask that are going through the recruitment process, and I'm sure many of you are just finishing up that process, and if you haven't finished it up yet, I encourage you, I'm sure you'll get the question, what do you look for in a prospective brother? And my answer is always the same. I'm looking for someone that wants to come, gain as much as they can, learn as much as they can, be excited about being here, and then are willing to give it back 110%. So I hope that kind of lays the framework of why I'm so excited to talk about this, how we motivate, support them, and value them from the time they enter the fraternity to the time where hopefully they never leave, right? Because we're hoping that we can keep them all as engaged alumni, but we want to make sure that they're paying it forward in whatever capacity, whether that be their time, their talent, or their treasure. All right. So how are we going to do that? The first is to really value them while they're a collegiate member, in my opinion. I believe every single brother deserves a role in the chapter, right? And I've had a lot of conversations about this, and people are always shocked. Like, their eyes typically get big, and they're like, give every brother a role. We have 140 brothers, which is the case of the Gamma Psi chapter. And I don't care. Every single person has a unique role. Even if it's not labeled, even if it's not an official title or executive committee position, they may have a role in the social setting of being that brother that people go to when they need a laugh that day, or someone that's going to smile at you from across the room, or someone that's going to sit next to you in class. Everyone has a unique role to play. And I think what's really interesting about this is that they can also play a unique role in chapter and be visible and a visible leader without holding a position. And this is something I've seen a lot of chapters struggle with. And we used to struggle with it a lot at the Gamma Psi chapter, was people felt as if they didn't have a position on paper, if they didn't have hub access to an EC position, that they didn't have a space to speak in chapter. And that simply just wasn't good for the chapter, and wasn't good for the individuals who were just showing up and sitting there for hours every chapter and not participating. So we've really instituted a lot of things to make sure that everyone feels like they have a role and that they have their time to shine, even in a virtual environment. So one thing that we introduced was the internship spotlight. So this is really highlighting our older members, again, trying to really re-engage those that may be at the end of their DSP life cycle in their college field. And it's been awesome. So every chapter, we have a 5-minute presentation of someone who went through the internship process. We asked them to cover what the recruiting process was like, what types of questions were asked in the interview, because that can help anyone, regardless of if you're interested in the company that brother work for or not, what the return offer looks like. And you can really get personal because they're your brothers, and really ask the questions that you want to ask, but maybe don't feel comfortable asking a recruiter or someone that currently works at the company outside of the brotherhood. So it's been a really great experience. I've learned so much just from my other brothers going through the process and understanding what companies I'd like to work for, what are some that I probably don't. And there's a lot to be gained from that. And then in person and also online, I think you can find unique ways to do this, is helping the chancellor with the challenging at the door and making sure that, I call it the welcome committee because I think it's awesome. And I always make sure we have multiple brothers there to challenge at the door and to get the grip and password, but also just to say hi, give a hug, right? That's a little bit different in the virtual environment, but we have different things. And it was kind of hard to demonstrate tonight, but typically what we do in chapter meetings, which I love, is our chancellor will literally, we have 140 brothers, will literally call every single brother out as they're coming in, welcoming them. I'd be like, hey, Beth, hey, Brian, hey, Courtney, hey, Daisy, hey, David, super excited that you're here today. And as people are entering from the waiting room, the chancellor is calling on every single person, 140 people all the way through. And they're filtering in over time, which makes it not seem as awkward as they're just reading a list down. But it's super awesome. And it's a great way to have people that maybe aren't participating in a meeting of 100 plus people feel heard and feel present. And I think that has been a really great way to retain brothers. And we have great attendance at meetings. And I think that small gestures like that go a long way. Another thing we've done, and this is maybe unique to my university, but the first 2 years you come in, you're actually pre-business. So you don't declare a major until your junior year and you have to apply through professional admissions. And that may be the case at your school, it may not be. But what we do is we have upperclassmen also give presentations about the different majors within the business category. So that way underclassmen can make informed decisions about where they're applying. We have 8 majors in the college. Sometimes it can be a big stressful decision if you want to do accounting versus finance versus marketing, MIS. Maybe people don't even know what management information systems is, right? And that can be confusing, especially as for someone who's not exposed to it. So that's a great way we can add value to our younger members while also being able to engage some upperclassmen who have really gone through the process and have already experienced what it's like to be in that major. And there's lots of variations of this, but I think it's really important that when brothers are there, you're valuing them being there and you're letting them know that you recognize their efforts in attending. So I just said that you don't have to give every brother a real position on paper to give them a position in the chapter. But that being said, I am a huge fan of chair positions. And if you come to any of the other presentations, I always try to include this because I think it's really, really influential and can give individuals great opportunity to lead within the chapter. I'm a huge proponent of giving individuals as much opportunity and as much responsibility as they want to contribute. And so on the right, I won't walk you through every single one, but at a very high level, leading GCC chairs, they're in charge of getting everyone excited about going to these events. Even virtually, we had over 50 brothers signed up for this past lead. Last GCC, we traveled with 35 from Arizona all the way over to Georgia, which was crazy. In Atlanta, it was an absolute blast. The last Denver lead right before this whole COVID situation, we had 40 brothers join us in Denver. And it's really awesome because you're giving a couple people responsibility to get everyone excited, to build out the itinerary, to figure out when we're going to be traveling, to figure out the hotels, book all that stuff. And that's great experience for them to be able to carry with them forward. But it also, it's different than just one of your EC members getting up there and saying, we need to have representation. We need to have someone at the provincial council meeting. Like, will someone do it? Please sign up. This is actually worked so well for us that we actually have a waiting list to allow brothers to go because we partially fund their travel. And typically we fill up all of our spots between 30 and 40 within about 45 seconds of us posting the link. So it's become a really exciting thing to go to these events. Highly recommended. I think it's a great opportunity, and especially virtually too, with the last lead being free. Definitely encourage brothers to attend sessions like this, and hopefully they can get a lot out of it. We also have Spring Fling, which is a fundraiser on campus, corporate sponsorships. I highly recommend for fundraising, especially in a virtual environment. It makes fundraising that much harder. I think this is one that can be executed very well in a virtual environment. Trying to figure out how you can build digital assets, whether that's putting any company on your website, social media, having them come into a chapter meeting, adding value to them, and then in turn, they're returning the favor by sponsoring your chapter is a great way. We have a newsletter chair. I have snippets from a newsletter to the left. It goes out every week. It's an email newsletter, and it's everyone's favorite thing. We post our chapter links in there to make sure everyone actually opens it every week, and it's a blast. We have so many fun things going on in the newsletter. I'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it's really become a staple of our chapter, and we put all of our updates. That way we don't have to spend as much time in chapter just going over the same things over and over again for updates. We spend more time on the business and the brotherhood and the other things that people really want to be there for. So that's when we were able to alleviate that. Any questions about the chair positions? I know I'm not going to go through all of them, but are there any that people want me to go into, or maybe they've never heard of and think is interesting and would like to learn more about?
I have one.
Sure.
Yeah, so what's the difference between the community outreach and engagement and community service, Vice President?
Yeah, that's a great question. So our VP of Community Service is really focused on finding ways to support the community. Typically, we think of like Ronald McDonald House being our national philanthropy dedication. We do a lot with them. Typically like going out to different soup kitchens, homeless shelters, doing things like that in the community that are really focused on giving back. The community outreach and engagement for us, it probably is going to look a little bit different for what your campus looks like, but I really challenged my chair of community outreach and engagement to focus on our greater university community and see how we can best support them. And so what we ended up doing was we hosted a mock career fair, and we had brothers that were currently interning and or working for a certain company represent mock recruiters the week before the real career fair, then had individuals from across campus join in and get practice on giving their elevator pitch, practicing getting all those awkward feels out about meeting someone for the first time on Zoom. And so that was a way that we could really build some outreach about, get the name out there about DSP, but also engage the greater community and add value back to the entire university instead of just to our members. So that's one way we do that. And so I think it can really mold to what you need in your campus, but we really view it as a way to better reach the actual university community, and then also the Tucson community at large, which is where our university is at. And they may work really well in tandem with the VP of Community Service. So hopefully that answers and helps.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, thanks for the question. Anyone else? And then Eric asked if, are they elected or appointed? So typically the way that we've done it is we've appointed them, but we do have them express interest in a survey, and we'll have all of them listed and they can list their preferences. Because of course I don't want to give it to someone who is not interested in the position. I want to give them to someone that grows. But I also think it's a great opportunity, as a lot of you are leaders on the call, to reach out to some members who maybe have never had that leadership opportunity, but they'd be really good for the job, and say, hey, would you consider doing this? So I think you could probably do a little bit of both, but just to be the most equitable, we do ask for them to volunteer for whatever position they would like to join. And what are some of the responsibilities in the mental health chair? So this is one that's been around only for about a year and a half, but love this position, and it's been received fantastically by our chapter. They do a lot of different things. Most recently, we had actually like a mental health expert come in from our counseling services at the university and do a presentation with us about stress management, which I think we all could use. I'm like, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm like, I need 12 cups of coffee to get through the day, so much to do, so little time. And we went through a lot of breathing exercises. And I actually, I was doing that before this presentation, and I use that before I interview and do a bunch of other things just to calm myself down before I enter the chat or the conversation. And that's something that we got out of that. But we also provide mental health resources, counseling services. They also do lead like chapter activities, whether that's like a decompression minute, breathing exercise. There's like a lot of things that people call centering practices, where you really envision your body and understand where you are, and it's all about clearing your mind and all of those type of things meditation wise that have also been really cool. So there's a lot of different fun things you can do with that. And some of the responsibilities for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So obviously this is a super, super important topic. And what we do with DE&I at like our chapter may look very different from other chapters across the country, but many of the responsibilities have really been understanding how we can best educate and improve our core competencies as members. So a couple of the things that we've done was we actually have an athletic director at our university who's in charge of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives for all of athletics. And we had him come in and lead a conversation and open dialogue around Black Lives Matter, around how to be a better ally to all communities and how to have tough conversations. Because I figured, why not have that tough conversation with your brothers, and why not learn together? I'm not going to ever claim to be an expert in DE&I, but I'm always one that's excited to listen and educate myself further on these topics. And I think that that's what this chair is really all about. It's not to point out the flaws. It's really about how we can educate ourselves to be better equipped in this business world, how we can educate ourselves just to be better people and better allies and better friends to our brothers who may come from very different backgrounds. The other things, one of the other main charges we give them is also networking with prospective employers who are recruiting diverse talent. We have a very diverse chapter, and We're very lucky to be able to provide them some best-in-class opportunities to go to interviewing and networking with different employers that may be for a certain community of practice. And we're able to do that through our diversity, equity, and inclusion chair, finding those opportunities and sharing them with the chapter. So there's a couple high-level things of what they do. So I hope that helped. Any other questions?
Hi, Brennan. I just have a quick question.
Absolutely.
So in terms of the corporate sponsorships, I guess, how do you go about facilitating those sort of conversations and connecting with different companies? I feel like it's something that I'm struggling with professional activities, like reaching out to companies and then maybe not hearing back.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally can understand that pain and frustration. And I think the biggest advice is just to cast a wide net. And, if you can do 100 cold calls, but if that one responds, and I think it's worth it. So of course, the easy answer is start with the people that maybe or your brothers know, or maybe you have alumni that are working for them. I think that's a great place to start. I typically just go on LinkedIn and search a company name and then Delta Sigma Pi after it, because then you're probably going to have a brother, even if you don't know them. I found that everyone's so receptive to wanting to help other brothers out. So that's one way that I'd recommend, just at least finding company contacts. And then the actual sponsorship conversation can be awkward, right? So I think you need to be very prepared in what you want out of it, whether that's, do you want the time? Do you want the money? Do you want a resource from them and what that looks like? And then what are you going to give them in return? Because I'm really big on making sure that you're providing value back, because you don't want it to be a one-sided relationship. So the way that we do it is every semester, we build a sponsorship packet. And essentially it's a PowerPoint presentation that gives a high-level overview of our chapter, talks that we have 140 members, that we meet every week. It's a lifelong commitment, a little bit about what DSP is, a little bit more about what Gamma Psi is. And then eventually towards the end, we have a different tiered system. So our sponsorships go from $500 to $1,000 a piece. And essentially at the lower level of the sponsorship tiers, you can give them whatever assets you feel comfortable with. But we've typically offered a resume book, which is quite literally just a compilation of all of the resumes from all of our brothers, in hopes that that might be valuable to them, because they may want to hire some of us, which would be a mutually beneficial thing. But a lot of times employers are looking to get a large amount of resumes, and that's an easy way to get 140 of them. Other things we offer are a different slot on our website, social media shout outs. And if you convert your Instagram account for your chapter to a business account, you can easily track all your metrics, which we report back to our sponsors. And then sometimes they want to come in and speak live, and maybe they want 30 minutes at a chapter meeting, or maybe they want to sponsor your recruitment. So there's a lot of different ways and different resources that you can offer them that you may have not thought people would actually want to pay for, but turns out they may. So it doesn't hurt to ask. And then typically at the end of the PowerPoint, I always have a picture of whoever is the chair for that semester, and it's a letter saying, we really would love your support. We'd love your partnership. I'd love to talk to you. Can I follow up? What is the best time to reach you? Whatever the case may be. And we've been really lucky. We've received probably 6 or 7 sponsorships over the past few semesters using that method. And it's been really, really useful. And I think they're getting a lot out of it. The biggest thing that I recommend is you have to maintain that good relationship. So you have to follow through. So when you offer all these things, we have year-end reviews where we compile all the things that we said we were going to do. We build a new PowerPoint for them and send it out to them saying, thank you for sponsoring us. Here's a recap of everything we agreed on, completed, fulfilled. We really appreciate the partnership and would love to re-sign you for next semester. So that's kind of our method on that. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that was super helpful. Thank you.
Of course. And then as far as reaching out to different companies or finding companies that may be interested, a lot of times if they have a partnership with your business school, that typically means they have high interest in your students. And I know I'm a little biased, but I would say, Delta Sigs are probably the best of the best. So that being the case, they probably want to connect with your chapter. So I'd start with the companies that have a good relationship, are coming to your career fairs, and are very visible on your campus. Any other questions on this? Awesome. Well, thanks for all the questions and participation. It makes it a lot more fun.
I think we have a couple of questions in the chat too.
Sure.
What are the responsibilities of the DEI chair and the mental health chair?
Yes, so we briefly covered that. Are there any follow-ups on that for DEI or mental health? Feeling good on those? Okay, if anything pops up or any follow-ups, just feel free to send it in the chat. I'm happy to go over that again. No problem at all. And so the next part we want to kind of talk about is how we can continue to value our brothers. And so I think the first biggest thing that I'm really working on every single day is practicing gratitude. And I have been very lucky to attend a couple of different leadership conferences, and I've heard this speaker speak many times about happiness and how to create happiness in your life. And one of the best ways to inspire happiness is actually to practice gratitude. And not only will the people that you're thanking love it, but also you will. So I want you to take 30 seconds right now. Think of someone in your chapter, someone in your DSP life that maybe you don't talk to on a daily basis. Maybe it's your RVP, maybe it's your DD, maybe it's your president, maybe it's the member that shows up but maybe isn't as involved. Take 30 seconds right now and send them a thank you. Just about thank you for being a great brother. Thank you for being in my life. Whatever you want to thank them for, take 30 seconds right now and go ahead and send a text. All right. I hope you're all sending it. I know that it will pay off. And what you'll be really surprised about is it's going to make their night. Like seriously, it'll make their night. It took you 30 seconds. And then by making their night, it's going to make your night so much better. So my roommates actually started this challenge. And every single day we have a group chat and we send 3 things that we're grateful for every morning. I think it's a super awesome thing. And what you can start to do, and as a leader, and especially if you're on an EC position, I think it's really influential in your brotherhood retention. I try to go through our roster and I'll send just a text, how are you doing? Thinking of you, grateful to have you in my life. Something as simple as that, copy and paste. And I try to do that over the course of the semester, especially when I was president. I reached out to every single member out of 120 people. If you do 2 or 3 texts a night, it makes their day. I mean, seriously, if someone were to do that, I'm sure you all have had someone do that in your life. And if you haven't, let me know. I'll make sure to recognize you and thank you for coming. But it's a super, super special moment. And it's something so simple, but it goes a long way. And it can really go a long way in retaining your brothers and keeping them engaged. We also have done digital brotherhood dates, speed dating, which is super fun. It's pretty common. So I'm sure your chapters are already doing it. But if not, even if brothers aren't comfortable meeting face to face, you can always meet online and it's super fun. One of the things that I love to do is send private messages on Zoom in chapter meetings. So if you allow that, in your chapter, sometimes it's a little bit serious and you probably don't want to be chatting during the meeting. But especially in transition periods or when people are entering the Zoom room, I'm always scrolling through and I'm like, I'll chat my friend, hey, I love the new haircut. I love what you're wearing. How are you? And it's a super cool way to feel noticed online, right? When you're 40 people joining a Zoom room, you probably feel like you can do whatever, make dinner, do laundry. I'm guilty of doing this during a bunch of my classes online. I'm like, don't tell my teachers. But seriously, it can be such a great thing and so easy to do and just chat someone and they feel heard, they feel recognized, they feel visible, even online, which is super special. And one thing that my teacher does that I love, and we've started doing at chapter, is acknowledgement moments. And this is just an opportunity to have an open floor and just say, anyone can acknowledge anyone for doing anything. And we leave it open. And I'd love, let's see, it's a little bit harder in a group where we may not know as many people. So I won't do it for the sake of that. But typically you probably know your brothers pretty well, and we'll open it up. And maybe it's something as large as someone got an internship offer, got an interview at a great company, and someone else can acknowledge them for that. Because if you only have your EC talking during the meeting, they don't know what every single person in your chapter is doing. They don't know all those exciting things. And we get a lot of fun congratulations for things that aren't as large, but still should be celebrated. Maybe it's an A on a test. Maybe it's overcoming, some sort of obstacle in their life. Maybe it's getting a new car that they saved up for. Whatever the case is, no matter how big or how small, leaving time for brothers to recognize other brothers, even if they're typically not at the front of the room talking, could be really valuable as well. All right, so we just covered valuing your brothers. Now we're going to move to motivating them. And this is what I'm super passionate about. I love to motivate. I love to inspire. I like to work with people to figure out what drives them. And it's really can be quite a challenge sometimes. And so one thing I'd like to for you all to consider is find what motivates them. So I didn't include it on the slide, but what we do when I was president leading my EC, and I think you could do it with your EC or chapter at large, is find each other's love languages. And I know that sounds kind of weird, but if you've ever taken the love language quiz, it's free online. There's also a book. And you can find what really makes people motivated and what literally inspires them to show up and put their best foot forward. And whether that's, sometimes it is touch, which you probably want to avoid in a chapter, right? But the other ones you could probably act on. So whether it's words of encouragement, positive affirmation, what if it's small gifts, which may just be like in the form of, hey, I brought you a cupcake today. Like, I'm so excited that you're here. There's a lot of different things and a lot of different love languages, especially in an EC in a smaller group, that you can kind of maintain. And I had every single one of my EC members do this when I was president. They sent me the results, and then I would think about how I'm going to recognize them in the most meaningful way to tailor to their individual wants and needs. And we saw great results. We had absolutely phenomenal participation and motivation because they were being recognized for their work in a way that they wanted to be recognized, which is super, super special. So something that we did is, this is kind of the bare minimum, but you can motivate your brothers by doing things that they want to do, which I think is really exciting and super easy, right? Or super hard, but very intuitive. So what do you have to do? You have to ask them what they want, right? And so this is I always laugh because my EC, we have retreats every semester, and this is always like, well, what should we be focusing on? What do the brothers want? I think they want this. I think what they want that. I'm like, okay, did we ask them? Like, did we send out a survey? Did we have an open dialogue about it? No, but I think people really want this. And it's like, well, it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what they actually want, right? So, and I actually take that back. It does matter what they think, but it matters more what everyone wants. So we always focus on trying to send out surveys. People get survey fatigue. So have a conversation, right? Send out feelers for your brothers. So we just got some results in the chat. Acts of service. I love it. Acts of service is good. Words of affirmation, quality time. Those are all awesome ones. And it's super fun. And it's great to know, because if someone is quality time, you could do a one-on-one with them. Maybe other brothers don't want that one-on-one, but maybe some do because they really need that one-on-one time with you. And that's a really special thing to know ahead of time and be able to plan for it. The next thing you can do is, a lot of people want jobs and internships, right? So bring recruiters into chapter. You'll be surprised how eager they are. Even if they're not sponsoring your chapter, people want to come in and talk to your brothers because, Delta Sigs are top talent in the business world. And I'm sure each and every one of you are highly desirable from recruiters and from a recruiting standpoint, and companies want to visit your chapter. If you don't have a connection to a company, or you feel like, we've reached out, we've heard nothing, let me know. I'm happy to put you in touch with some different individuals within the fraternity that are actively recruiting. I know we have partners at the national level. Geico is one that comes to mind. They have a big office in Tucson. They recruit very heavily. We had a brother just commit to them last week, which is exciting. So different companies like that we have connections to at the national fraternity level, but also that we may have individual connections to. Reach out to me if you need any of that. And then lastly, and I'm going up the slide instead of down, trying to keep you all on your toes, but bring in new and exciting speakers, right? This new virtual environment that we're in allows you to do so much more. We have brothers from all across the country. This would have never been possible if we were doing everything in person. And so I want to give you one example from the Desert Mountain region. So I got to work with the other 5 presidents in my region to create this awesome event. And it was truly a team effort. Everyone was super, super influential in doing this. And we had over 200 brothers sign up for this event. We had all of our VPPAs. I know Jordan's on the line. He helped plan the event. And David, obviously, with his oversight, which is super lucky to have him. I'm scrolling through, making sure I don't miss anyone. So if there's anyone I missed from the Desert Mountain region that helped plan this, thank you from the bottom of my heart. It was the coolest thing. And what we had, the green box right there, Jeff Cottrell, he was the past chief marketing officer of Converse. He most recently served as the senior vice president of marketing for the Coca-Cola company. And he was the chair of the Grammy Foundation, just a very accomplished, really, really interesting person. And it was just a Q&A. The entire hour it was just brothers asking questions. And seriously, we had to cut them off. Brothers were like going crazy. It was awesome. And it's very rare that you find a professional activity that people are like, yeah, that's awesome. Like, let's have so much fun. And brothers were laughing. They were really engaged. I mean, it was absolutely awesome. And we had that ability because we're online, right? He was actually in Atlanta and joining all of us in Arizona, Texas, and New Mexico. So that was a super cool thing. So reach out to your connections, go large. LinkedIn is awesome. Even if you don't know someone, I'm sure you all get the robotic LinkedIn messages from all these crazy people that randomly friend you. But if you're warm and people love to help students, reach out to alumni. There's so many people that would love to come talk at your chapter. And I think now more than ever, it's more accessible for these great people to come join. Another way that we motivate is by inspiring a shared vision. So one of the ways that we do this is by setting it as a chapter. So back to the question about what we do for diversity, equity, and inclusion, we actually created a statement for the Gamma Psi chapter. And if any of you are interested in seeing it, I don't have it pulled up right now, but I can send it to anyone after the fact. And we made a goal for ourselves of what that means. Like, we're not standing behind empty words. We said, here's what we want to communicate both to our brothers and to the external world about what we believe as a chapter, and we're going to inspire that shared vision. And the way we did that was we actually asked every single brother in a chapter meeting to fill out a survey, and they all said what was important to them about DEI. And then we had our chair actually compile that information, wordsmith it into a statement that then it went back to the chapter for revision several times before we arrived at something that we really all loved and could stand behind holistically. Every single brother signed on to it, and that was a really special moment. And then everyone's invested. If they feel like they have a piece in your final decision, they want to see it succeed because they have something at stake and they have some skin in the game. The other thing I love to do is encourage reflection. So I really push my brothers, especially when we go into recruitment season, to reflect on their DSP experience and how influential it was starting with their recruitment experience, because that's your first impression, right, of your chapter. And I remember being so nervous. I remember waking up at 5 a.m. to check my phone to see if I got an email, if I got a bid. I stayed up all night doing all my work for it because I was like, these are my people. Like, I want to be here more than anything. And sometimes it's easy to forget in the hustle and bustle about how much you love this organization, about how much you want to be there and how you want to share that with prospective brothers. That's a really special thing that you can talk about and really reflect on. And then, of course, building SMART goals. I'm sure you're all familiar with the concept. A couple of times, some of the letters may mean different things depending on where you're from, but we set them at the individual executive level, or the individual level, the executive committee level as a chapter. And then we also check in on a regular basis. So the SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based or time-bound. So obviously a great framework. I'm sure you all have already used it, but just to give you an example of something, like I set a SMART goal for tonight. And mine is that each participant can take at least 3 points of what I'm saying and bring it back to their chapter or larger organization to make an influence this semester, right? So that was specific. It was measurable by the 3 different elements. Attainable, I think that 3 is a good number and can definitely be translated over. It's relevant. We're all here. We all want to make our organizations better. And it's time-based because I wanted to see that happen within this semester. So I encourage you to make your own. I know we're running a little bit short on time, so I won't go through the exercise of all making our own, but I encourage you to seriously sit down. You are 42% more likely to follow through on your goal if you write it down. So actually, after repeating that fact, I changed my mind. I think this is that important. Can we all write a SMART goal for our chapter and put it in the chat so that way we all can see your goal? Because not only will that help by writing it down, 42% more likely to follow through, it'll be even exponentially higher because we're all going to hold you accountable, hopefully, by being able to read your goal and see it. So take a second if you want, write it out. I'll keep blabbing while you're trying to focus, so that way I'll make it doubly hard for you to get it done. But I think the other part that's really important is setting the goal for your chapter is setting your individual goal. Right? I have plenty of goals that I have to set for myself all the time. One of my new ones is reading. So my goal for this semester is to read 2 books before graduation that pertain to my career growth and leadership development. I think those books are fascinating, and I never, ever, ever carve out the time to read. And I think it's really easy and really important. And so that's one of my personal goals. But I'm not seeing any goals come through the chat. So we're going to wait a second until we can see some come through. And thanks, Erica, for sending the link to the love languages. All right, we got from Jordan: growing sponsorships by $2,000 annually and use those funds to send brothers to national events. I love it. I think that's a fantastic goal. And hopefully we're back to in-person here before long. So definitely those funds will go to good use. That's super, super neat. Any other goals before we move on? I'm counting on you, folks. All right, we'll move on, but please keep sending them as we go through. It'll be awesome. All right, Macy just posted a goal. Fantastic. Thanks for your participation. All right, let's continue with motivating brothers. So I think a big part of making people feel included in the chapter is inspiring one-on-one connections. So we've talked about the brotherhood opportunities, and brotherhood dates is a great way to inspire that. Sometimes people are busy outside a chapter. They don't want to make the extra time, so we make them do it in chapter. We'll do breakout rooms of 2 people. We'll swap them every 3 minutes, do those type of activities. Even if it's just a 10-minute activity, you get to talk to 5 different people that maybe you wouldn't have made that effort to externally, because we have a captive audience. So what a better time to do that? And maybe that's the reason that person ends up coming back when we move to in-person, because now they know the name, or they know someone they can go sit next to because they had that 2-minute conversation. So I think that's, again, really important. As your leaders, I think a lot of you are leaders on your ECs. I think this is super important. And my dad taught me this from a young age, is to praise in public and teach in private. I think this is really important. Whenever any brother does anything, I love recognizing them. I'm notorious for waking up every morning and the first thing I do is check Facebook to see if it's any of my brother's birthdays, and I'll post it in the group chat. I love doing it, and it actually breaks my heart when a brother beats me to it, because that's like my thing, and I love it. And this doesn't really go with praise, but it's just really with the, I guess it could, praising them publicly just for existing, which is a good enough reason to celebrate someone. So there's nothing too big, too small. When they do great on an event, when you're really proud of an outcome, make sure you let the chapter know and give them the credit, right? Recognize them for their contributions and commitment, and definitely never take that away from them. It's always better to give them the full credit because they deserve it. And then the other opportunity, if there's an issue, right, it's always good to teach in private. So if something happens and you're not happy about the way it happened in chapter, instead of causing a scene in front of others and embarrassing that brother, just take the time to reach out to them individually, ask them to have a conversation. I know this sounds pretty intuitive, but I've seen it go the other way, and it's not great. It's not a great outcome. It's really a no-win situation when it's the reverse. So I think that's important. And then of course, we can motivate people to come by making chapters fun. So we've done Kahoots, breakout rooms, the Sunshine Box is always a crowd favorite. We sent out a Google Drive link or Google Doc link or Google survey. Probably. We're going to get to one of the googly things that make this work. And essentially everyone will go ahead and put in any compliments, any shout outs to brothers that maybe they didn't want to share in the acknowledgement moment. And then our chancellor reads it out at the end of the meeting. Typically, if we're in person, we actually pass around a physical box with the sun on it, and they'll write little notes, put it in the box. It's super fun. Oh, I love that. Macy just gave a great tip. If your chapter uses Slack, there's a way to enable a birthday bot so that way no one gets missed. I love that. That's fantastic. I'm going to steal that, Macy, so I appreciate you throwing that out there. Making the conversion from GroupMe to Slack, it's going to be quite the haul for my chapter, but I think it'll be worth it. So very neat. Thanks for sharing. And then one thing that we did that was so fun is with our different families and our bigs and littles, we did Family Feud online, which was so fun. And we quite literally had the brothers go head to head, and it was awesome. People were going nuts. So super, super fun. Great way to engage. And here's your bonus. We're moving a little bit away from our scheduled programming, but I think it's really important that a lot of you are here in leadership roles. And this is kind of my framework that I use personally, and I thought it was worth sharing. So this is Gary Combe on the right. He is the current CEO of Procter & Gamble's grooming division. And I'm going to be working for him starting in June, which is crazy. And I had the opportunity to talk to him when I was interning there last summer. And I asked him, what are the 3 traits that you look for in upcoming leaders in the company? And what do you value? And I found that what he looked for in the company, I actually looked for in other people in the fraternity without even realizing or putting labels on what I was looking for. And so here's the 3 things on the screen. I think the first one is especially important right now. Determination, being in COVID, it's really easy for brothers to want to check out, right? It's easy not to log on. It's easy to choose your bed over logging onto your Zoom meeting after class. And I appreciate you guys not doing that, right? You're determined, you're here. I appreciate that. For some of you, it's really late, and I appreciate you staying on for that. And you have to be determined. You have to persevere. You have to persevere through all these challenges that continue to arise. And the second one I really love, and this is kind of my personal area that I love to contribute to continue to grow, is emotional intelligence, right? You should be able to pick up on your brothers. It's harder online than it is in person, but if you see a brother who's sitting alone, right, that's one of the more visible signs. Or if you see that someone has an expression on their face that you know is probably not typical of them, it's probably time to reach out and check in and see if everything's okay. And then last but certainly not least, the ability to inspire others. And I think this one's super important, especially online. You have to inspire your brothers to want to be there. And you can do this through the setting goals, the variety of different tactics we've already talked about, but I just love these 3 things I wanted to share. So now we'll transfer over to our last area, which is supporting brothers. And I have a whole slide dedicated to this because it's something I'm very passionate about, and a lot of people don't give a second thought. I am known as being the person to review resumes in my chapter. I probably review maybe 10 or so a week almost, especially around career fairs. But I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of resumes from my chapter. And it always surprises me that everyone's looks the exact same. It says Delta Sigma Pi, Gamma Psi chapter, attend chapter meetings and events, participate actively in community service and fundraising. And I mean, it's just I could copy and paste that into every resume in DSP. But that doesn't show your potential employer or anyone else that you did anything. And that's back to the first point I made of giving everyone a role. And I tell them when they send me that, I was like, if you truly don't believe that you have anything more tangible than this, let me know and I'll find you something that will be better for your resume that you can actually own. Even if you're not in a position or you can't even be a chair, I'll make you in charge of a smaller event for chapter or something that you can own and put on your resume that's important to you and specific to you. So I recommend you just to spend a couple minutes in a chapter meeting going over what do you put on your resume, because I don't think it should be copy and paste for across your chapter, because you do a lot more, in my opinion, than just attend a meeting or event. Maybe you attended a lead school and you represented your chapter. Maybe you went to all these networking sessions. Maybe you're at this session tonight. Participating in an event is less meaningful than grew professionally through attending, motivating, supporting, and valuing brother sessions. Whatever the case may be, you can always tweak it to add a little bit more value and communicate what you get out of your Delta Sig experience. And then here are some other ways that we do in chapter of really being able to support brothers. So of course, we talked a little bit about the mental health chair. We have several different university resources that we like to connect with. And I think that this is a really specific by campus basis, but our campus has a very, very, very high rate of students who are food insecure. And we have this organization called the Campus Pantry, which provides free meals to students and staff and faculty who are in need. They provide about 1,000 meals a week. So just to give you some indication of the level of need. And we provide resources about when their distributions are, where to go. It's COVID, they're still distributing, when to use their facility, how they can get access to those resources. We're providing all that. We also are showing them scholarships, which can both come. I know that the fraternity scholarships just opened, I believe. So check that out. Definitely send those opportunities on to your chapter and your brothers. But also your university likely has additional scholarship funding that you can share with your brothers. There may be a COVID relief fund, maybe for brothers who lost work or weren't able to, pay for rent or textbooks or tuition because of whatever other extenuating factor and circumstances happening in their life. Connect them to that resource. One of my favorite things we did was also bring in academic advising from the academic standpoint to help individuals succeed. How can they better engage in an online environment? Also, like we had a pass-fail move during the COVID semester. Students had no idea how to navigate the pass-fail. Should they take it for a letter grade, which in some cases there actually are negative side effects to taking it for pass-fail. Some grad schools actually don't look upon it super favorably. Some don't care at all. But you may not know about that unless you have a resource there to answer those type of questions. So we brought in academic advisors. We, of course, love our faculty advisors and our faculty initiates. We rely heavily on them to bring in content and updates about the college. Bring your dean in. Your dean, I'm sure, would love to touch base. We've had ours join a few times, and that has always been a really exciting time. And then last, feel free to bring me in if you'd like. And if you don't like me, then I won't be offended. But if you're looking just for someone to come in, be excited, share anything, I can share what we shared tonight. I can present on another topic. Some of my favorite things to talk about are recruiting, really inspiring a shared vision within your EC. Just an innocent plug, exactly like Kristen's saying. But we love to join, love, just to connect with other brothers. And if you're finding that you don't have a lot to do and can't support them, and even if it's in an individual basis, I'd love to help support you and your chapters. And here we go. We're almost to the end, so I appreciate all you folks continuing with me. We're getting there, which is exciting. So one of the things that I think is important is meaningful recognition, and we've talked about many ways to do that, right? Whether that's the sunshine box, maybe that's the acknowledgement moment. Back to the newsletter, we actually do every single week in our newsletter, we do shout outs to about 6 brothers, and we have brothers anonymously send those in. So we have like probably 5 or 6 consistent ways to meaningfully recognize our brothers. And I never think it's enough. I always am looking for ways to continue to recognize those that do outstanding work. And even if they're just showing up, I think that's worth the recognition. And I just can't emphasize that enough because people love being recognized. Ensuring everyone's seen or heard. This is a more difficult thing to do, right? So if you're noticing people are normally not the ones speaking up, maybe they don't feel like their opinion's valued, chat them if you're online and say, hey, like I noticed you haven't spoken on this issue. Do you have something to share? Can I help like articulate your point for you if you can't find the words to share what you'd like? And there's a lot of exciting ways to go about that. And I'm sure you have many other ways that you guys focus on meaningful recognition, but I just can't stress the importance of it enough. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we call ourselves brothers, right? And to me, I take that extremely seriously. And I always, so I already told you about one of the things that I always say during recruitment. The other one is like, I will do anything for my brothers, like literally anything. if I am working on a project or doing homework, I will drop whatever I'm doing for a brother that needs anything. And that goes for all of you. Some of you I know, some of you I've never met before, and I'm super excited to see you here for the first time. If I can do anything for you, let me know. Maybe I can connect you with a mutual connection on LinkedIn that you're interested in talking to. Maybe you want to talk about chapter stuff. Maybe you just need someone to vent about something that has nothing to do with DSP. Please reach out. And I take that commitment very seriously, and I hope that you all do too, and I'm sure you all do. But it never hurts to remind your chapter that you're there, and you take that word brother and the familial aspect of being in an organization like this very seriously, because I do, and I think at the end of the day, that's why people stick around, right? The professionalism is the most important, right? You're gaining a lot of it, but the reason people stick around is because of the people and the way you make them feel. And if you can reinforce that over the course of your Delta Sigma experience, I think it's more than worthwhile. And then, of course, I've better practiced what I preach of just always saying I want to make sure all voices are heard. So are there any folks that would like to share any practices that you all have that pertain to any of the topics we covered? Anything that I can do to, anything that you'd like to share with the greater good? The floor is yours. So feel free to come off mute and share anything you'd like. No pressure.
Hey, Brennan.
Hello.
So one of the questions or one of the areas of concern that I'm hearing a lot from North Central chapters as I speak to them is seniors, right? Our seniors are kind of disappearing in second semester, whether that's because we're stressed over jobs in the pandemic or whether that's because, we're just tired, whatever the case might be.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for those chapters who are saying, yeah, all this stuff is awesome, but what do I do for my seniors?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's a couple things that I love, and I'm really glad you brought this up. And so I think back to the concept of meaningful recognition, right? Like, I think this is a time to celebrate your seniors, and that's a great way to keep them engaged. If you're going to be honoring them at a chapter, maybe you're doing a senior spotlight and you allow a couple brothers 5 minutes a chapter to share about and reflect on their DSP experience, tell them what it means to them, and then you can have other brothers speak about them to them and give them a closing message. I think that's a great way, and I wouldn't want to miss that. And I think even some of the individuals who may be less involved wouldn't want to miss on the opportunity to close out a chapter in their life. So I think that's one great way that you could do it. Some other ways, if they're really stressed out about jobs, try to find some companies that are hiring and bring them in. And hopefully that's an incentive to re-engage them in the normal chapter experience. If they feel like they could possibly get a job from coming, I think that's a great way to do it. Another thing, which if you just have those that are really struggling, you just have to have a conversation, right? If you don't change your approach, I feel like that's one of the most common issues. They're not going to start showing up. And we used to have this problem years ago. As like I was on my EC and they're like, why is no one coming to chapter? We keep sending out, in the group meet every week that it's the same time. This is the dress. Why is no one coming? I'm like, well, has anyone picked up the phone and just reached out individually? Like, no. And so one of the things that I love that we did a couple years ago is we established a secret committee that was under Brotherhood. Quite literally did not tell anyone in the chapter unless they were on it. And they were in charge of about 15 brothers. And every single week, they would make sure that they were present. And if they weren't, they'd reach out to them as a friend, not affiliated with the chapter. They said, hey, we missed you this week. Hope to see you next week. Is everything okay? Just checking in. And we made it very secret in a way that we wanted to make sure it didn't seem scripted, didn't seem forced. It was really an organic reach out. And the only people that knew it was me and the people that were doing it, which was awesome. And we saw great retention and people started coming back because they're like, wow, people are noticing that I'm not there. So those are a couple of tactics that we've used that have worked. So hopefully, if you wouldn't mind passing that along, I hope that would help as well. Thanks for the question. Anything else anyone would like to share? Any questions, comments, concerns? I know we're nearing the end of the hour.
Any other last minute questions? And also too, you'll be receiving a survey of this lead session. So if you could take a few moments to fill that out and let us know how it was.
Yeah, definitely.
That was Yeah.
Sorry, Cody, didn't mean to interrupt. Beth just mentioned in the chat, and I just wanted to address really quick before we all log off. She said, most of the time they're unsure of what's next, and I'm not sure how to speak to that and not be scary, right? It can be very intimidating that you don't know what's next. But I think what I've typically defaulted to is, regardless of what's next, you still have your brothers, right? Like these are the people that are going to take you to the next level. And these are the people that are going to be with you through the good times and the bad times and all the interviews and all the stress. And reach out to your alumni, reach out to alumni from other chapters that you may not know, but may be able to get you a connection at a company that you're interested in. So although it can be very scary, I think that's even more reason to lean into the DSP network and try to reach out to some other Delta SIGs. So hopefully that's one way, but there's a lot of other tactics we can talk through offline. But thank you again for all coming. And thank you again, Cody, for moderating the session. Really appreciate your time.
And thank you, Brennen, too. And for all those that don't know, Brennen is the next National Collegian of the Year. Will be on the board. So, woo. I know Kristen is on this card too, so I think Brennen has some big shoes to fill with that.
Huge.
He's going to be great. It's going to be so great. I'm so excited to hand the torch over to him.
I know it sounds like the board's going to be very well motivated and supported with Brennen on the board.
Brennen, I wanted to jump in real quick just because I think everyone on the call will agree. You gave a lot of really great information tonight. I wrote down some points, and thank you so much for the great presentation.
Thanks, David. I really appreciate you being on and helping make the session happen. Really, really appreciate it. Awesome. Well, thank you all. I appreciate it. Stay in touch if I can help support your journey internally of DSP or just personally as well. Would love to connect. But have a great night, especially for those folks on the East Coast. Bear down, go Cats. Love that, Tim. Thanks.